This is Audible. From the series and Volume 1 of The Unseen City, Salazar'S Touch. Lelitha The Elmvale Vampire. By Kevin B. Lelitha The Elmvale Vampire, Ottawa, Canada. It was late August, and as if on cue, Ottawa was engulfed in a series of short but intense storms. This otherwise unremarkable Tuesday night was punctuated by several downpours, one of which arrived with a ferocity reminiscent of Amazonian tempests. A bolt of lightning struck a tree perched on a small hill behind the historic Parliament building on Rideau Street. The impact sent branches flying, and a massive chunk of freshly charred wood pierced the ground, creating a fissure as though the earth itself had split apart by mere feet. The ground trembled, and the crack widened in the darkness of the stormy night. A guttural, almost animalistic sound was reported by those in the vicinity, pedestrians, drivers, and nearby residents alike. Some described it as a wolf's howl in the storm, while an elderly woman waiting for the OC Transpo bus in front of Parliament Hill whispered hurried prayers, claiming the sound was unlike anything she had ever heard. The gash in the earth, positioned at an incline, formed a small waterfall as rainwater cascaded in. At the bottom of the crater lay a dilapidated wooden coffin, mostly exposed, its rotting planks split in several places. The moonlight spilled through these cracks, illuminating the skeletal remains of a woman bound in rusted shackles and draped in tattered rags. Her withered body had a sunken face, her flesh dry and clinging to her bones. Long, brittle hair draped over her shoulders, tangled and frail. The sight was grotesque, her skeletal form imprisoned in rusted chains, the cruel remnants of her past. As the storm raged, the trickling rainwater within the crevice swelled into a steady flow, forcing its way into the coffin. Along with it came 3 small rats, too weak to resist the water's pull. They scurried frantically, seeking shelter, scrambling over the motionless corpse. Then, suddenly, the leathery, skeletal hand of the corpse snapped to life, seizing 2 of the rats in a single grip. A sharp, piercing squeak echoed before they were shoved into her mouth. She bit down with the hunger of a feral beast, sucking them dry with terrifying speed. Blood trickled from her lips, mixing with the rainwater as droplets seeped through the coffin's splintered wood, dripping onto her face. The nourishment spurred a grotesque transformation. Her flesh, stiff and ashen, began to regenerate, her skin taking on a deeper hue. Her grip, once frail, grew steadier. The 3rd rat was caught and drained just as swiftly. With each pulse of stolen life, her body mended. Skeletal fingers twitched, limbs quivered, and a deep, primal breath escaped her lips. A cloud of dust exhaled from the centuries spent decaying. Her eyes flickered open. One was a rich hazelnut brown, fully restored, while the other remained bloodshot, a crimson void struggling to heal. Her thoughts were fragmented, her memory a haze. She ran her fingers over her sunken cheeks, her ribs, the scab-ridden surface of her chest. A surge of anger swelled within her, an overwhelming frustration at the grotesque state of her existence. She bared her teeth and screamed, a furious, grief-stricken wail. She cursed in Creole, her voice raw with emotion, and shouted a name over and over, "MacDonald!" With newfound strength, she struck the coffin's decayed wood, pounding until it splintered and collapsed inward, burying her beneath a heap of damp earth. The fissure, created by the lightning strike, quickly filled, leaving no trace of the unearthed grave. As if appeased by the night's eerie resurrection, the storm abruptly calmed. The wind softened, and the raindrops, once relentless, fell with a measured grace, as though nature itself had taken a step back. It was 2 a.m. Downtown Ottawa was desolate, save for the occasional patrol car or late-night traveller. The air was cold, the streets damp, the breeze light but biting. Unlike Montreal or Toronto, where the city pulsed with endless energy, Ottawa's weekdays were reserved for work, home, and quiet streets. Yet amidst the silence, music echoed faintly from the side-door bar on York Street. Its late-night event had ended, the guests gone. But the staff lingered, cleaning to the rhythmic hum of music just loud enough to reach the Parliament Hill grounds. Buried beneath, Lelitha stirred. The distant melody seeped into her consciousness, calling her forward. Desperation fueled her efforts as she clawed her way up, her fingers scraping through the wet soil. Each movement was frantic, a fight against suffocation, though she did not need air. She simply needed to be free. 20 minutes later, nothing remained of her grave but an empty hole and disturbed earth, a mystery for the morning's groundskeepers. Emerging from the dirt, she crawled forward, leaving behind a muddy trail that soon turned into staggered, unsteady footprints. She passed through the Parliament Hill gates unnoticed, her body drenched, her limbs weak. She walked without direction, uncertain of this unfamiliar world, recoiling from the harsh glare of streetlights. Instinct led her forward, toward the music from the side-door bar. She was starving. She muttered to herself in Creole, the words unlocking her identity. Où c'est Lelitha? Où c'est Lelitha? Où c'est Lelitha? C'est au même. C'est au même qui porte l'animo po tout mécanisio. You are Lelitha. You are Lelitha. You are Lelitha. You are the bringer of death to perverted men. The words felt right, a confirmation of self. She longed to scream her name in triumph, but her body was still incomplete. She needed more blood. As she neared the music, she turned down an alley, her strength waning with every step. Then she heard it. Slow, steady, rhythmic. A heartbeat. She inhaled deeply, savouring the rich scent of blood coursing through unseen veins. The pulse of life called to her. She turned the corner and entered a dimly lit alley. A homeless man lay passed out beside a dumpster, surrounded by syringes and discarded rubber bands. He reeked of alcohol, urine, and neglect. He was oblivious, defenceless. Lelitha grinned, her expression twisted. A simple first meal. She lowered herself beside him, lifting his pant leg with skeletal fingers. She ran her hand over his bare skin, ritualistic, almost reverent, before sinking her teeth into his calf. The rush was immediate, electrifying. Blood, hot and thick, surged through her decrepit form, bringing colour and vitality. Memories flickered like lightning in her mind, her life, her suffering, her betrayal. She saw the boys she had grown up with, boys who had become her tormentors. She had been their playmate, their servant, their victim. She drank him dry. Power surged through her body. Her skin softened, her curves returned, her face regained its beauty. She was no longer a walking corpse, but a woman once more. Then she heard footsteps. She turned, sluggish from the intoxication of tainted blood. A man stood at the alley's entrance, frozen in horror. Lelitha tried to move, but her body betrayed her, numbed by the drugs in her victim's veins. She was trapped in a haze of euphoria and weakness. She saw herself in him, another man with her fate in his hands. As she teetered on the edge of consciousness, she saw him step forward, his arms reaching toward her. Jeremy Stayholmes was a 26-year-old college dropout, once a sweet and honest boy before the tragic death of his parents in a car crash, just a day before his 10th birthday. Left with nothing by his impoverished parents, he was thrust into the social welfare system, bouncing from one CAS home to another and shifting between foster parents until, at 17, a neglected and weary Jeremy decided to forge his own path. He secured a job at Tim Hortons and enrolled in the culinary arts program at Algonquin College, located on Baseline Road. And now, here he was, staring at a beautiful yet dishevelled woman, covered in blood, lying near the lifeless body of a man she had just killed. Yet he did not move, did not speak, did not raise an alarm. His mind had stalled as he gazed at her, amazed, intrigued, and filled with a subtle undercurrent of fear. Before he fully processed his decision, he found himself moving forward, bending down and reaching out toward Lelitha. She remained terrifying. Her flesh regenerated before his very eyes, but the most striking features that captivated Jeremy were now fully restored. He avoided looking directly into her mesmerizing eyes, sensing their uncanny pull. Yet, despite their allure, the pools of blood surrounding her body reminded him that she was no ordinary woman. She was something else entirely. Without a plan, or even a coherent thought about what he was doing, Jeremy wrapped Lelitha in his coat and carried her to his car, a rundown 2011 Toyota Yaris. He was a lone wolf, except when necessity dictated otherwise. He lived in one of the dilapidated apartment buildings directly across from Elmvale Mall, once a prime location for residential living, now a haven for roaches and rats, plagued by clogged pipes and an ever-present stench of spiced food mixed with the foul, lingering odour of mildew-infested carpets. Footsteps alone stirred up waves of putrid air. Yet despite the building's condition, Jeremy's apartment was different. It was not luxurious, merely a standard one-bedroom unit, but it was clean and orderly, with a well-equipped kitchen, 2 sofas, and a dozen plants strategically placed throughout. Sitting on one of his sofas, he stared at Lelitha in awe, confusion, and a creeping fear he had been struggling to suppress since bringing her here. He had cleaned the blood from her face and hands, but dared not remove the rags and rusted chains still wrapped around her limbs. He covered her with a blanket, yet, out of an unspoken apprehension, left his coat wrapped around her, just as it had been when he carried her from the alley. Jeremy had no doubt that he was dealing with something inhuman. Her blood, her teeth, those captivating eyes, and an otherworldly beauty set his nerves on edge. His mind buzzed with curiosity, but his instincts screamed at him to flee. Was she a vampire? He muttered under his breath, barely believing his own words. He let out an uneasy chuckle, dismissing the ridiculous notion, until he glanced again at the dried blood and remembered the sharp, fang-like teeth he had seen earlier. Yet as he observed her now, her teeth looked perfectly normal. He couldn't sleep. The fear kept him awake, watching over his unconscious guest. As dawn approached, Jeremy hastily shut the curtains, ensuring that not even the smallest crack allowed sunlight inside. However, he left a thin strip open on the far side of the apartment, just enough to separate himself from Lelitha should his suspicions prove correct. Then, with deliberate caution, he prepared 2 bowls of oatmeal and set them on the coffee table. Dragging a heavy kitchen stool across the apartment, he positioned himself within the sliver of sunlight, creating what he believed to be a safe zone, just in case. For added security, he took photos of his guest, reasoning that if anything happened to him, investigators would have proof of her presence. To his surprise, her image appeared perfectly normal in the pictures. Hollywood had gotten it wrong. If she was a vampire, then vampires did show up in photographs. This small revelation made him smirk, reassuring him, if only slightly, that she might not be what he feared. As he studied the images, allowing himself a moment of distraction, Lelitha stirred. Jeremy tensed. Apart from her tattered clothing and shackles, she looked like any ordinary woman waking from sleep. She yawned, stretched her fingers and toes, and wiped her face with her now clean hands. For a fleeting moment she seemed human. But then Jeremy's gaze fell upon the rusted chains once more, and his stomach twisted with unease. She remained still for a moment, eyes darting frantically around the room, like a squirrel hyped on caffeine, though her head remained eerily still. Then she honed in on a sound, the steady rhythm of a heartbeat. Jeremy's heartbeat. Their eyes met, locked in silence. The unknown stretched between them, heavy and unspoken, until Jeremy finally broke it. "You must be hungry," he said, his voice cracking slightly. He gestured toward the bowls of oatmeal on the coffee table. "Go ahead, it's just oatmeal," he added, noticing her hesitation was stronger than her curiosity. Lelitha hesitated for only a moment longer before grabbing one of the bowls. She sat up, gripping the spoon awkwardly but with familiarity, then devoured the contents in seconds. The oatmeal was cold, unappealing, but she ate it anyway. It wasn't what her body craved, but there was cinnamon, strong and fragrant, masking the blandness. Still, as she swallowed the last bite, nausea hit her hard. She choked, coughed violently, then spit out some of the food. Jeremy exhaled in relief. At least now he knew she wasn't starving to death. "I'm sorry, sir." Lelitha spoke in a timid voice, her accent distinctly Caribbean. "Don't worry about it. I'll clean up," Jeremy reassured her from his sunlit corner. Then, unable to suppress his curiosity any longer, he added, "On the bright side, I'm glad to see you can eat normal food, besides just blood." As he spoke, images of last night, of blood and the dead man, flashed through his mind. Lelitha, however, was lost in another thought. The way he had spoken, the way he had offered to clean up after her. Such things were foreign to her. Her memories, fractured as they were, still held onto a time when she was the one doing the cleaning, when she was the servant. And yet, Jeremy, this man with his complexion, treated her differently. "Who are you, sir?" "Where am I?" she finally asked, her voice uncertain. Jeremy hesitated, then, in a flurry of words, explained everything, how he had found her in the alley, the blood, the dead man, the chains. Lelitha listened, struggling to process the reality she had awoken to. If not for the fragmented memories of slavery, of being buried alive, of rats gnawing at her coffin, she might not have believed him. Jeremy took a breath, then finally asked the question burning in his mind. "So, you are a vampire, aren't you?" A long silence followed. Lelitha did not answer. Perhaps she did not know. Her body tensed. Her face flickered between shock, guilt, and something else. Something resembling pride. She closed her eyes, listening. She could hear his heartbeat, hear the blood flowing in his veins, hear the neighbor's dog scratching at a door. Then she smiled. "Don't worry, Sir Jeremy. I won't hurt you. At least, not yet. No need to be afraid, as long as you continue taking care of me." Jeremy gulped. "Oh, I'm not scared," he blurted. "Why would you think that?" Lelitha chuckled. "Your heartbeat, sir. It just went crazy." Jeremy shivered. "So, what exactly is a vampire?" Lelitha asked, curiosity creeping into her voice. Jeremy's eyes narrowed. I think you should be the one answering that question. Lelitha suddenly felt faint. Her heartbeat quickened, and she started breathing heavily while squeezing her hands. Her lips felt dry, and she couldn't feel her breath against them. Placing a hand over her mouth, she realized she wasn't breathing. She didn't even need to. A chilling realization struck her. She didn't feel human, at least not entirely. Taking a deep breath, she began to speak. I was born on the 9th of August, 1784, on the MacDonald estate. My mother was a house slave named Esmea. Lelitha glanced up at Jeremy, who listened intently. He exhaled, relieved that, for now, the worst had passed. She wouldn't attack or eat him, at least not yet. In true Jeremy fashion, he relaxed his tensed muscles and mentally regained control of the room. His questions were finally being answered, and his curiosity outweighed his fear. She continued, I never knew my father. My mother told me he was one of the male slaves, but she didn't know who. She was used solely for breeding. So, you were born a slave? Jeremy asked. Yes, sir. I was born into slavery and… Sorry, before you continue, can you stop calling me sir? It makes me uncomfortable. Besides, I'd like to think of you as a friend now. Just call me Jeremy. This pleased Lelitha. A broad smile spread across her face as she settled more comfortably on the couch, preparing to continue her story. The master of the estate had twin sons, who were only a few months older than me. Growing up, they treated me more like a little sister than a slave, she said, with a hint of appreciation. Then, on my 17th birthday, everything changed. The day started well. I had completed my chores when the young masters pulled me away from the main house to the fields, where they had prepared birthday gifts for me. That evening, they fought over me. When their father returned home and discovered the reason for their quarrel, he flew into a rage. I was labelled a witch and condemned to die. They tied me up and gagged me. I was screaming. And the last thing I remember, before everything went dark, was the sound of a shovel digging over and over again. Lelitha leaned back on the couch as she finished her account. So you were buried alive? Jeremy asked, now thoroughly captivated. Yes, I think so. I remember somehow breaking the chains, pulling off the blindfold and clawing at the wood above me for hours. But then, I think I suffocated to death, she replied. Jeremy leaned forward, elbows on his knees. Wait. So you weren't a vampire before you were buried? He blurted. Lelitha's brow furrowed. What is a vampire, Jeremy? You asked me earlier, but I didn't understand, so I kept quiet. I tend to do that when I don't know something, she admitted, smiling innocently. Before he could even process her question, his mouth had already begun forming an answer. Yeah, I think you are a vampire. Last night, I saw your fangs and watched you drink that man's blood. Lelitha's expression remained puzzled. So, a vampire? She asked again. Oh, right. Your question. What is a vampire? Jeremy hesitated, trying to find the right words. His eyes flickered to his phone. Work. He sighed. Manny was out, Greta was off, and Julio would be handling the dinner rush alone if he didn't show up. Shoot, I have to go, but… He bit his lip, thinking. Lelitha, meanwhile, was curiously running her hands over the toaster and microwave, fascinated by their unfamiliar designs. A light bulb moment struck Jeremy. Oh, hey, I know. He grabbed the remote and turned on the TV. As Lelitha wandered closer, he gestured to the couch. Sit? She asked. Jeremy nodded. Yes, please. He scrolled through Netflix, landing on the Vampire Diaries and the originals, then handed her the remote. What better way for her to learn about modern vampires than by watching them? "So, a few things you should know," Jeremy began, but when he turned to her, he noticed her wary yet intrigued expression as she stared at the TV. "Oh, I'm sorry. This is a TV. I'll show you how it works. It's simple," he reassured her, setting the remote down. "This is the year 2022. People think vampires are myths, and that they're evil. I do think you're a vampire, but that doesn't mean I think you're evil." He pointed down the hall. "Bathroom is there. Here's some food in case you get hungry. Please don't go outside, and avoid the sun. It might kill you. The shows will explain that. Just watch these, and when I come back we can talk. Sound good?" Lelitha's smile widened, nodding eagerly. The word friend still warmed her heart. Before leaving, Jeremy explained how the TV worked, demonstrating how to switch episodes and pause. After a few tries, Lelitha got the hang of it. "So I press this for the images to move, and this to go back?" she asked, testing the buttons. "Yep. That button also pauses or stops. These others move up, down, left, or right," he instructed. As he headed to the door, he shut the only curtain letting sunlight in. No safe zone now. He had decided to trust a vampire who didn't even know she was a vampire. "I hate leaving you like this, but I'll be back as soon as I can. Watch the shows. They'll help explain things," he said, gripping the doorknob but hesitating. Lelitha turned her shoulders toward the door, wanting one last glimpse of her new friend before he left. "Don't be sorry. I understand," she reassured him. Jeremy exhaled. He wasn't sure about his choices since last night, but he was rolling with them. His life had been dull, aimless, broke, and worst of all, boring. This felt like something out of a movie or book, and he was here for it. He couldn't wait to get back, even though he hadn't left yet. He didn't realize it, but the excitement in his expression made Lelitha feel something unfamiliar, cherished. He had called her a friend, and that word meant more to her than anything she had ever owned or loved. "I hope you don't get bored here alone," he said. She laughed. "I spent hundreds of years in a rotting coffin. I think I'll manage." Jeremy grinned, said a quick goodbye, and rushed out. Lelitha spent the day watching the shows he recommended. Mastering the remote took time, but once she got the originals going, she was hooked. She expected to learn from it, but didn't expect to be so entertained. As she watched, she tested the myths. Placing her hand in the sun through the curtain, no reaction. Trying to retract her fangs, they stayed put. But the moment she mimicked a vampire's growl, her fangs extended, startling her. By afternoon, Jeremy still wasn't back. Bored, she flipped through his books and magazines, though her reading level, shaped by her mother and former masters, was limited. Still, the images fascinated her. She marveled at the freedom women seemed to have in this era, whispering to herself, "It's a paradise." Just as she settled into more TV, a barking sound drew her attention. The neighbour's dog was louder and closer. Curious, she opened the door. A tiny white poodle stared up at her. Suddenly, her heartbeat raced. She could hear the dog's pulse, the blood flowing through its little veins. Looking down the empty hall, she realized she was hungry. The puppy stood before her, barking incessantly, attempting to sniff her while gazing at her with unwavering focus. Its tail swished back and forth on the floor like a tiny brush, sweeping away dust. Lelitha gasped, bewildered by the strange pull she felt toward the dog. Without hesitation or understanding of her own impulses, She suddenly seized the dog by the neck and yanked it into the apartment. She had no control over her actions. The door had barely clicked shut when her fangs extended, and she lunged for the dog's midsection, sinking her teeth in with purpose and force. The dog wailed, thrashing in agony and terror, but her grip was unyielding. She clamped its muzzle shut with one hand, never pausing as she fed. As she drained the creature dry, a sense of clarity returned. She knew this was wrong, yet it felt exhilarating, empowering. The more she drank, the stronger she became, the more alive she felt. She continued until the struggle ceased entirely. The dog lay motionless in her arms as she sat on the floor. Guilt, laced with an unshakable sense of justification, gnawed at her. Now she had to deal with the body. Her eyes scanned the apartment, and the reality of Jeremy coming home to a dead dog on the couch dawned on her. That was not an option. Yet, she wasn't supposed to leave the apartment, and the mere thought of stepping outside sent waves of anxiety through her. This place was all she knew, the only world she had consciously observed since awakening. As the rush of the blood faded, the lifeless form in her lap suddenly seemed grotesque. She grimaced and rose to her feet, lifting the dog as if it were something fragile and repulsive all at once. Cradling it with the hesitance of a first-time father holding a newborn, she carried it into the washroom and placed it in the bathtub. As she turned to leave, she stole another glance at her work. Even away from her lap, lying stiff in the tub, the sight was no less revolting. She pulled the shower curtain closed, then shut the bathroom door before settling back onto the couch, once again assuming the guise of an innocent, newly freed soul. Life surged through her veins, and she felt better than ever. Yet an insatiable hunger gnawed at her, a void that had only deepened. It was a lingering, relentless need, like an itch she might one day learn to ignore, but for now could not suppress. A sharp knock at the door jolted her from her thoughts and the gnawing emptiness in her gut. She hoped it was Jeremy, but her senses immediately told her otherwise. The scent was wrong. Without realizing it, she had already become attuned to his smell, and whoever stood outside was not her Jeremy. "Jeremy? Jeremy! Are you there?" A woman's voice rang through the door, followed by another knock. "Sorry for bugging you. It's me, Farida. Buster ran out of the apartment again, and I was just wondering if you saw him." Farida called, her voice growing sharper as she noticed a shadow shifting beneath the door. Lelitha stood motionless. Should she answer? Unaware that her shadow had betrayed her, she hesitated. "Hey, Jeremy, come on. I can see you standing there. Just open up, will you?" She had no choice. She had to open the door and entertain this woman. It would be her first real interaction with another person, and the thought sent a rush of excitement through her. With a deep breath, she unlocked the door and turned the knob. "Oh, I'm sorry. You're not Jeremy," Farida blurted, taken aback. Lelitha had the foresight to throw on some of Jeremy's clothes, opting for a pair of his sweatpants and a hoodie, an improvement from the tattered rags and loose chains. "So sorry for knocking so much. I thought Jeremy was home," Farida added. "No, it's okay." "Are you a friend of Jeremy's?" Lelitha asked, studying Farida from head to toe with an unnerving, constant smile. "I wouldn't say we're friends exactly. We're neighbours. We say hi now and then." "Are you his girlfriend?" Farida inquired, hesitant as if the question itself felt intrusive. "Something like that. A work in progress," Lelitha replied, winking playfully. The confidence wasn't hers. It was borrowed from a character in a show she had just watched. But the hope of becoming something with Jeremy was real, as natural as a victim's attachment to their saviour. "Oh, I see." That's nice. He's a good guy, and not bad-looking either. Farida chuckled. She continued talking, but something about Lelitha unsettled her. The smile seemed natural, the body language playful, yet the unwavering intensity of her gaze sent a shiver down Farida's spine. She dismissed it as nothing more than an odd quirk. Anyway, I'm looking for my dog, Buster. He's a white poodle, very friendly. Did you see or hear him barking? Farida asked. Oh no, sorry, I haven't seen or heard anything. I've been stuck on the couch all day watching TV, Lelitha replied, pointing at the couch. It was a reflex, a nervous response spurred by guilt and fear. Her knees trembled, her heart pounded, and amid the internal chaos, the hunger within her grew unbearable. Farida's breathing, the rhythmic pounding of her heart, it was intoxicating. Lelitha clenched her fists, fighting against the overpowering urge that clawed at her insides. Well, I hope you find your dog, Lelitha said, gripping the door, ready to retreat. Oh, thanks. And wow, I'm so rude. I forgot to introduce myself. Farida extended a hand with a warm, disarming smile. I'm Farida. For a brief moment, Lelitha saw her not as prey, but as something exquisite. But the moment passed, and instinct took over. She reached out, expecting a quick handshake and goodbye. Instead, the instant their hands touched, everything unraveled into chaos. With unnatural strength, Lelitha yanked Farida into the apartment, sending her hurtling against the hallway wall with a sickening thud. A dent formed where she landed. Dazed and in pain, Farida barely had time to process what had happened before Lelitha was upon her, gripping her by the wrist and pinning her to the wall. With one hand, Lelitha pressed against Farida's forehead, tilting her head back to expose her throat. Farida was frozen, paralyzed by terror. Lelitha leaned in, inhaling deeply before tracing her tongue along Farida's neck in a slow, deliberate motion. She clamped a hand over Farida's mouth to stifle any screams before sinking her fangs in. Blood surged into her mouth, rich and divine. Human blood was nothing like the dog's. It was euphoric, electric. Farida thrashed, tears spilling from her wide, horror-stricken eyes, but Lelitha's grip only tightened. She drank greedily, savouring every pulse of life draining from her victim. As Farida's body grew limp, Lelitha pulled back, watching the life fade from her eyes. She leaned in, and with eerie tenderness, kissed her cheek. I'm sorry, Farida, she whispered, before plunging her fangs in once more. When it was over, she recoiled in disgust, not at the act, but at the lifeless body left behind. Annoyed, she dragged Farida's corpse into the washroom, laying her beside the dog in the tub. She smoothed Farida's hair, arranging her hands to obscure the bite marks. But no matter how much she adjusted, the sight repulsed her. Hours later, the sound of a key turning in the lock broke her trance. Jeremy was home. Whoa, what the fuck? You were just on the couch. How did you get her? Exclaimed Jeremy. Oh, it was easy. I just ran fast. So fast that your basic human eyes couldn't even register it. She laughed, casually walking past him. Jeremy, still frozen in shock, began to process the subtle but unsettling changes in Lelitha, her speech, her mannerisms, even the way she moved and smiled. This wasn't the same person he'd left in his apartment that morning. Something had changed while he was away. She seemed completely adapted to the present era, shedding the awkwardness she'd once had. Strangely, Jeremy found this somewhat comforting. He could now interact with her like a regular, albeit highly unusual friend. As she passed him, She noticed his heartbeat had quickened. He looked visibly unsettled. "Wait, are you scared of me now?" she asked, her tone laced with concern. "Oh, no, not scared. Just different," he stammered. "Okay, I don't quite believe you, but rest assured, you have nothing to fear from me. You're my only friend." She stared at him, waiting for a response, but he remained silent. "Please tell me you believe me. I can prove it." "Prove it? How?" Jeremy asked, half amused, half dreading her answer. "It's simple. When I'm around you, I don't feel the urge to drink your blood. I can hear it rushing through your veins, just like I heard it in Farida, your neighbor, and her dog, Buster. But unlike them, I seem to be able to control my urges around you," she explained, her tone resembling that of a child seeking approval. Jeremy's mind blanked the moment he heard Farida and Buster's names. How did she know them? What had happened while he was gone? He knew he'd regret asking, but he had no choice. "What do you mean? And how do you know Farida and Buster?" His voice carried an anxious edge, but there was no immediate reply. Lelitha's confidence wavered, her expression shifting to guilt as she glanced at him, waiting to be reprimanded. After a tense silence, she spoke quickly. "Okay, I promise it wasn't my fault. It just kind of happened. I had no control over it," she pleaded, stepping closer. Jeremy swallowed hard. "What wasn't your fault?" "Did Farida come here? Is she okay?" His voice was forced into an unnatural calmness, aware that angering Lelitha was probably not in his best interest. "Yes, she did. First it was the dog. He was barking like crazy outside. When I opened the door to check, he ran in, and I couldn't help myself. I drained him dry. Then Farida came looking for Buster. She was beautiful, smelled so good, and yeah, I lost control again," she admitted nonchalantly, her eyes glazing over as though reliving the moment in twisted ecstasy. She leaned against the wall, savoring the memory, oblivious to the horror on Jeremy's face. Jeremy stood frozen, his mind scrambling to process what she had just revealed. His pulse pounded in his ears, but no coherent thought formed. "Where is she?" he finally managed to ask, his voice hollow. Timidly, Lelitha pointed toward the bathroom. Jeremy turned toward the door, his stomach knotting in anticipation. He expected to walk into a gruesome scene. Blood-splattered walls, torn body parts. But as he stepped inside, the bathroom was oddly clean, save for the closed shower curtain. He never closed it. An ex of his had always nagged him about it, one of the many little things that had driven him to end that relationship. Taking a deep breath, he reached out and yanked the curtain aside. Farida and Buster lay motionless in the tub, their bodies unnaturally stiff. Jeremy staggered back, the sight solidifying the nightmare he had walked into. He didn't need to check for a pulse. He already knew the answer. "Is she still alive?" His voice was eerily steady, betraying the storm raging inside him. "No, I think she's dead. And Jeremy, I'm sorry, I couldn't control it. I was starving," Lelitha admitted casually. Jeremy's breath hitched. "Are you still hungry now?" he asked, refusing to turn and face her. "No, I'm satisfied for now, but I don't think I can eat normal food anymore. Like that oatmeal you made me. I think I have to live on blood now. I know this isn't ideal for you, but I'm sure we'll figure something out." She smiled, sensing his heartbeat returning to a calmer rhythm. She then shifted uncomfortably. "So, what are we going to do about her?" "I don't think we should stay in the apartment with a dead body." Jeremy exhaled. "What's done is done." I didn't know her well, but she was always cheerful and kind. But yes, what's done is done. Hearing him speak fondly of another woman stirred an unfamiliar emotion in Lelitha. Jealousy. The sympathy she had felt for Farida moments ago soured into something else. Jeremy, ever the pragmatist, forced himself to think logically. He couldn't let emotion cloud his judgment. If he played his cards right, he could turn this situation to his advantage. We'll need to get rid of the body tonight, when the city is asleep. I know a spot near the Champlain Bridge or Britannia Beach where we can burn her without attracting attention. He turned to face Lelitha, forcing a confident smile to conceal the dread tightening his chest. Oh, I saw in a show once that they cut the body into small pieces. It makes transport easier. Lelitha offered enthusiastically. Jeremy's patience was wearing thin. No, Lelitha. That's just a bigger mess. If the police investigate, they could find traces of blood. We'll wrap her in the shower curtain, place her in garbage bags, and seal them with duct tape. That's the best option. Okay, sure. How can I help? She asked. I'll need help lifting her out of the tub and wrapping her up. Jeremy knew he could physically do it, but handling a corpse was an entirely different challenge. Weren't dead bodies supposed to be heavier? Oh, I can help with that. I have monstrous strength now, Lelitha joked, flexing her biceps playfully, trying to lighten his mood. Jeremy forced a chuckle. Just don't use that strength on me. She heard the tremor in his voice. Slowly, she stepped forward and wrapped her arms around him. With her head resting on his shoulder, she whispered softly in his ear. Jeremy, I'm sorry for stressing you out. And for Farida. I owe you my life. I promise to always be by your side, to protect you. I am yours. And you are mine. Those words echoed in Jeremy's mind. The fear of being killed by her faded, replaced by a different fear. The fear of being bound to her. But as he took in his current life, a small apartment, no family, a dead-end job, he realized that, for better or worse, this was a new chapter. So he embraced her, holding on to the certainty that, at the very least, life with her would never be dull. At 3 a.m., they finally left the apartment with a body in the trunk. Lelitha's strength proved useful, but Jeremy insisted on carrying the bag himself. It would look less suspicious if they were seen. Lelitha watched him struggle, amused yet intrigued by his stubbornness. They stopped at a gas station on the way to Britannia Beach. Jeremy bought a gas canister, filled it, and picked up a lighter. The night was just beginning. Jeremy's chosen location wasn't directly on the beach, but beside it, at the end of a deserted road leading straight to the banks of the Ottawa River. The area was empty, the night was bitterly cold, and the homeless had long sought warmer corners in alleys or shelters. Along the narrow stretch of land separating the road from the river stood 3 metal barrels, frequently used by vagrants to light fires and fend off the cold. That was Jeremy's plan, to burn Farida and Buster in one of those barrels. Even if someone noticed the flames at that hour, they'd assume it was just the homeless seeking warmth. No one would bother to check. They had parked the car a few yards from the barrel. This time, Lelitha took it upon herself to lift the heavy bag from the trunk, carrying it to the container before dropping it inside. Jeremy doused the bag with gasoline, ensuring it seeped through every layer. He also threw in a few old shirts and newspapers he found in his car's trunk, hoping they'd accelerate the flames and reduce the remains faster. Jeremy stood motionless, gripping the lighter, staring into the barrel. He felt awful, frustrated, and angry. He blamed Lelitha, though he was wise enough to keep his resentment bottled up. He concealed his emotions well, disguising the turmoil within. Then, without another word, he flicked the lighter and tossed it inside. Flames erupted instantly, leaping high into the air, the wind twisting them in every direction. The fire cracked and hissed, its glow cutting through the darkness. It was strangely mesmerizing, destruction at its most beautiful. His artistic side admired the sight, but they couldn't afford to linger. Jeremy hurled the entire gasoline container into the fire before stepping back and pulling Lelitha with him. He was her protector, and she was eager to remain under his care. The drive home at 4 a.m. was silent. Jeremy's anger still simmered, while Lelitha had nothing left to say. She had already apologized and promised fidelity. What more did he want? She shouldn't have cared so much, but she did. He was important to her, and his cold silence gnawed at her. The longer it lasted, the more annoyed she became. As soon as they reached the apartment, Lelitha flung the car door open and stomped away from the building, her steps furious. "Where are you going?" "The apartment is that way," Jeremy called after her, gesturing toward the building. Without stopping, she shot back, "I'm going for a walk." "You're still mad at me even after I apologized. That's making me upset. And hungry. So I'm walking." Jeremy debated stopping her, but the mention of hunger made him hesitate. Maybe this was his way out of dealing with her. But he wasn't ready to let her go. Not yet. "All right, you know the building. Apartment 716. Be careful," he finally called out. Lelitha kept walking, but a smile crept across her face. He might be angry, but he still cared. Though it wasn't freezing, the night was cold. Not that Lelitha noticed. She wandered from the Elmvale apartments down St. Laurent Street toward the St. Laurent Mall. The streets were empty. Yet, like every Western city, the lights blazed as if the world never slept. She marveled at the glowing McDonald's sign, reading each road sign she passed. Eventually, she crossed a bridge and found herself staring at the illuminated Newden strip club sign. It displayed slender, naked women bathed in neon light, sparking a thrill within her, a strange excitement at her newfound freedom. As she stood, entranced, a noise caught her attention. Two men, clearly intoxicated, loitered in the strip club's parking lot. Mechanics by trade, they had likely spent their wages on liquor and lap dances. The club was closed, yet they lingered, drinking away the last drops of their earnings before sobering up for the drive home. The neighborhood was known as the Mechanics Zone, lined with auto repair shops, mostly owned and operated by immigrants. That day had been grueling for Ivan and Marwan, two junior mechanics from a nearby shop. Their boss, caught in the throes of a bitter divorce, had taken his misery out on them. Twice that day, he had smacked them across the head over petty mistakes. They needed the job, so they swallowed their pride. Marwan, gripping a wrench, had fantasized about smashing it into their boss's skull. Instead, he settled for drowning his anger in liquor, trading insults about their employer and his soon-to-be ex-wife. Both men noticed Lelitha standing by the road, fixated on the club's sign. In their drunken state, they saw an opportunity. "Hey, sexy, are you lost? The club's closed," Ivan called out, stumbling forward, Marwan trailing sluggishly behind. Lelitha wore Jeremy's oversized sweats and a small coat that barely provided warmth. Nothing about her outfit was enticing, except for her face, which neither man had yet seen up close. She turned and stared as they neared. The stench of alcohol clung to them, and she could hear the rush of their blood, thinned from the liquor, humming like a melody in her ears. She smiled. She wasn't afraid. But as they advanced, memories of Farida flooded her mind. She thought of Jeremy. What would he do if she made another mess for him to clean up? She had to be careful. Now standing in front of her, Marwan sneered. "Hey, bitch. What's your name? You a stripper? I'll pay you if you dance for me right here." His arrogance, fueled by alcohol, made him bold. Lelitha didn't fully understand the insult, but she had seen women react to that word on television, and they never took it kindly. She shot Marwan a glare so piercing that both men instinctively knew they had crossed a line. Ivan, hoping to salvage the situation, pushed Marwan aside. "Ignore him. But you know, he's not completely wrong. The club's closed, so if you came to make money, you're too late." He wobbled slightly as he spoke. Lelitha tilted her head. "What's a strip club?" Her innocent smile was misinterpreted as an invitation. Marwan chuckled. "Come with us. We'll show you." Ivan sighed, sure that Marwan had just scared her off. But then Lelitha extended her hand toward him, still smiling. "All right, show me," she said. Neither man questioned why a strange woman would willingly follow two drunkards into the unknown. They saw only the pleasure they expected to take from her. They led her to their car, a battered brown Mazda Tribute, exchanging glances of silent agreement. Driving only 2 blocks, they parked behind their closed auto repair shop. Men always wanted one thing. Lelitha had learned that from television, and while she found the idea of sex intriguing, she craved something else entirely. She was starving. "So, is this a strip club?" she asked, watching Ivan fiddle with an old radio. "Oh no, baby," he chuckled. "The club's back there, but a strip club is anywhere with music, a sexy woman, and chairs." He pointed at 2 nearby seats and played a sensual Latin tune from the radio. Both men sat eagerly, watching her. She hesitated, confused. Their impatience grew. Ivan reached forward, tugging at her coat. She let him. Then he gripped her sweatpants, pulling her waist closer as if guiding her to dance. She debated whether to walk away, to avoid making another mess. But then Marwan sealed his fate. "Dance for us, bitch," he slurred, slapping her hard across the butt. The dam broke. She turned on him with blinding speed, straddling him in an instant. To Ivan it seemed like aggressive foreplay. Then Marwan's muffled screams died under her firm grip. She sank her teeth deep, her hunger taking over. By the time Ivan realized what was happening, it was too late. She was uncertain about what would work best, so she mixed all the chemicals and spilled them across the floor and onto the corpse. Rifling through her dead victim's pockets, she was fortunate to find a lighter in Marwan's jacket. She grabbed her coat, and just as she was about to test whether her chemical concoction was explosive, she recalled the stack of money Marwan had flaunted in her face. She had no personal need for money and was unsure how to use it, but she figured Jeremy would appreciate it. Wasting no time, she searched their pockets, took every bill and wallet she could find, and then set the auto shop ablaze. The fire spread rapidly, engulfing nearby auto shops as thick smoke filled the early morning sky. As Lelitha strolled away at 5:35 a.m., she caught sight of the Newden Street sign again and smirked. She had grown fond of the area, but more importantly, if her last 2 victims had been regulars at the strip club, she would never have to worry about finding food. Jeremy, in turn, would never run short on cash. It was a perfect arrangement, and she hoped this would help convince him. By 6 a.m., she returned home, blood staining her clothes, hair, and fingertips. Jeremy, alarmed, questioned her about the night's events. She recounted everything, up to the moment she pocketed the money. Jeremy's serious demeanour faltered for a brief moment, as a proud smile broke through when she explained why she had taken the cash. His concern, however, was not about the men she had killed, but about the risks she had taken. The initial shock of dealing with a killer had faded since Farida's death, but he sat her down and lectured her on safety. They discussed the importance of money, bank accounts, identity cards, and the necessity of finding a reliable forger. He also shared his perspective on society and how to navigate it. Most significantly, they addressed her desire to work at the strip club as a dancer. Despite his reluctance, Jeremy admitted that such an environment was an ideal hunting ground for her. They watched YouTube videos about strippers and their lifestyles. After some time, Lelitha convinced Jeremy to watch her practice, mimicking the seductive moves she had seen. Within 10 minutes, despite his lack of expertise, Jeremy was convinced she was a natural. He struggled to conceal his excitement, finding some assistance in the couch pillow beside him. When the song ended, he quickly cut the exercise short, but ultimately agreed to her plan. "If you're going to do this, then we should follow the professionals and set up rules so you don't get into trouble," Jeremy said, holding the stack of cash she had placed on the coffee table. As he counted the money, he sorted through the wallets, separating debit from credit cards and adding any loose bills to the pile. "First, we need to get you some clothes. This afternoon, we'll use this money to shop for you," he continued. Lelitha leaned back on the couch, feeling not only safe, but finally useful to her benefactor and friend. "So, what are the rules?" she asked, staring at Jeremy, eager for his response. He took a moment to gather his thoughts before spending the next 10 minutes listing out the rules, noting them down in his phone. Using his limited knowledge of strip clubs, he emphasized the importance of always staying in control and avoiding excessive drinking. Given her nature, this was crucial. He explained that strippers were often expected to do more than just dance, with sleazy patrons making inappropriate requests. He advised her to target older, wealthier men who were willing to spend. If such a man approached her for more than a dance, she was to suggest meeting at the end of the night for a private car ride. From there, she would handle her needs and, if necessary, call Jeremy for assistance in disposing of the body. Lelitha considered herself an expert at getting rid of bodies. Fire was always the answer, and the thought of it made her grin. More rules were added, all focused on ensuring her safety and maintaining secrecy. That morning, reassured once more that sunlight didn't bother her, they ventured downtown to Rideau Mall for shopping and sightseeing. The trip was followed by a visit to Newden Strip Club, which opened its doors as early as 11 a.m. The club manager, who was also a part owner, insisted on seeing Lelitha dance before offering her a shift. Impressed by her moves, he agreed to give her a spot. "Do you have a pimp?" he asked bluntly. Jeremy interjected immediately. "No, and she doesn't need or want one." All right, just asking. That way I'll make sure they stay away from her," the owner replied with a sly grin before returning to his work. That evening, Jeremy and Lelitha discussed the inevitable encounters with aggressive pimps. She suggested that he act as her pimp, but he refused, saying it would degrade her and wasn't a role he wanted. Instead, they agreed she would handle any unwanted advances with force, enough to hurt, but not kill. With her strength, she needed to learn control. For weeks, Lelitha brought in large sums of money while the local police scrambled to investigate the rising number of missing men. There were no bodies, only abandoned cars, some burned, others wiped clean of any prints. Jeremy and Lelitha had mastered the art of evasion, stashing money in his bank account and a locked deposit box at TD Bank. But Jeremy knew their luck wouldn't last forever. The disappearances were becoming too frequent. The city wasn't in a panic, as Ottawa police were adept at suppressing alarming news. But the pattern wouldn't stay unnoticed forever. Despite their arrangement being strictly business, Jeremy and Lelitha couldn't ignore their growing feelings for each other. Small bouts of jealousy arose, and Jeremy made it clear he wanted her for himself. Yet he hesitated to act on his desires, knowing too well the fate of those who got too close to her. This divide in their relationship led to the first major incident. Lelitha had followed a young man home after work. Unlike her usual victims, he wasn't immediately fixated on her body. Instead, he observed her, questioning why she worked as a stripper and suggesting she was too refined for the job. He revealed he was a writer studying strip clubs for a book. She was intrigued, having never met a writer before. She considered telling him everything, but ultimately decided against it, realizing Jeremy should be involved in that choice. Instead, she asked for an Uber, promising to return with a story that would knock his socks off. When she relayed this encounter to Jeremy, his reaction was immediate and angry. He forbade her from seeing the man again, furious that she had considered revealing her true nature. But beneath his anger was jealousy. She had spent time with another man without treating him as prey, making Jeremy feel less unique. The second major incident was even more disastrous. One night, Lelitha came home with $20,000 in cash and the wallet of her latest victim, a retired police detective set to leave the force in 2 months. When Jeremy saw the ID, his face drained of colour. They had crossed a dangerous line. "Okay, this is what we're going to do," Jeremy said, formulating a plan. "We need to prepare to leave town. We'll empty the bank accounts, keep cash, and when the time is right, we'll head to Vancouver, then to Europe. But for now, you stop working. No more feeding at the club. We'll find another way." Lelitha frowned. "And where am I supposed to feed? I'd rather leave now. I'm bored of this place." Though he agreed with her logic, he knew an abrupt departure would raise alarms. They compromised. 1 more week in Ottawa. The final straw came when a detective named Jake visited the club, questioning strippers about the missing men. He took an interest in Lelitha, but she played along, agreeing to an interview to throw him off. When she told Jeremy, they knew it was time. The next day, they packed their belongings, took the first bus to Montreal, and 2 weeks later, disappeared into Vancouver's shadows, leaving behind nearly 25 bodies and a city none the wiser. The end. Hope you enjoyed this short story from The Unseen City, Salazar'S Touch Volume 1. I took great pleasure in writing these stories, and though riddled in fiction and creativity, I owe the city Ottawa for its inspiration and its disposition.